Okay, let's get going. Good morning. I'm Steve Rosansky, President of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to the Multi-Chamber 2nd District Supervisor Candidate Forum. The Multi-Chamber Forum is a collaboration of all of the Chambers of Commerce from the cities that are represented by the Supervisor from the 2nd District. The mission of a Chamber of Commerce is to be a catalyst, convener, and champion for the businesses and residents in our communities. Presentation of this candidate forum is part of that mission. Today, we have with us 3 out of the 5 candidates running. Newport Beach Mayor Pro Tem Kevin Muldoon, former state senator for the 37th District, John Moorlach, international tax attorney, Janet Rappaport. Costa Mesa Mayor Katrina Foley was invited to attend, but was unable to participate. Fountain Valley Mayor Michael Vo accepted our offer to participate, but late yesterday, I received a communication from his campaign consultant that he would not be participating. Now for the ground rules. The candidate forum will consist of 3 distinct parts. Part 1, I will ask each candidate to make a 2-minute opening statement as to why he or she is running for Orange County Supervisor for the 2nd District. Part 2, I will ask a series of questions that each of the candidates will be allowed 2 minutes to answer. Please listen carefully to each question when asked. All 3 candidates will answer the current question before the next question is read. The order of answering has been randomized, so no one will have to answer in the same order every time. Part 3, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute to make concluding remarks. The order of answering will be reversed from the order of the opening statements. Robin Grant will be serving as the timer for all 3 parts. The timer will begin timing when it's indicated for the candidate to begin his or her response. The timer will hold up a yellow card indicating 15 seconds remaining. When time has elapsed, the timer will hold up a red card indicating the candidate should stop talking. The candidates are not required to use the entire allotted time for their response. If a candidate concludes his or her response before time is up, I will move on to the next candidate. Each candidate is expected to behave in a civil manner towards the other candidates, and please do not interrupt another candidate's response. At the end of the forum, there will be some short concluding remarks. All candidates should remain on the webinar until concluding remarks have been completed. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll launch right into it. We've got some really good questions here. I think that if anyone who sits in the supervisor seat should be well versed in, or at least have a working knowledge of what's being asked, and hopefully we'll have a good response as to what their plan would be in the event that they do win the 2nd supervisor district seat. So we'll start with the first question. The Orange County Healthcare Agency has been the primary driver of the vaccination program here in Orange County. As an agency of the county, the Board of Supervisors is ultimately responsible for the healthcare agency's performance. On an A to F scale, how would you rate the healthcare agency's performance, and what are your ideas on expediting the vaccination of Orange County residents? So we will begin with Kevin, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So nobody called me on it.
I was about to.
You're supposed to have your opening statements. So,
yes.
So you can think about the question as we're moving along, but we will go through the opening statements. I'm sorry, folks. That was my mistake. I'm so excited to hear your answers that I just, I couldn't wait. So we will start with the opening statements. The order is based on the order that you appear on the ballot. So we will be starting with Kevin Muldoon first. Kevin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to fellow opponents as well. It's great to be here with you. I don't know if you saw the recent video of the gentleman addressing the judge and the filter came on as a cat. If a filter comes on, I expect you to let me know that's the case. Probably one of the most embarrassing moments a lawyer could experience in their career, and Janet would agree. This virtual world's changed our lives. I am a local Orange Countyan. I was raised in Lake Forest. I went to Loyola Marymount for undergrad and China for law school. Was a prosecutor in the DA's office. My wife and I are raising our son here. And we're doing this virtually because we're facing a serious pandemic. And I believe that now is a time for us to continue to fight, to work with businesses to remain open. allowing businesses to be shut down again, or an ineffective hard shutdown as the governor has imposed on us, is bad for the community. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for people's mental health. It's bad for children. It's done a terrible disservice to all of us here in Orange County. And if elected as the Orange County Board of Supervisors, I will be working hard to allow businesses to safely remain open, and encouraging children's sports to also be played, and encouraging children's rights to be able to go back to school. Obviously, this county is a large county. We're an economy and almost the size of a state into ourselves. And this is in a very important seat, because many of the freedoms that we enjoy are related to public health currently. And I feel it's in the best interest of the residents of Orange County to know that they have someone solidly behind them, their individual rights and their ability to earn a living safely and provide for their family. So it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I look forward to answering these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And so we will move on to the next one in the order, John Moorlach.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve, thank you for organizing this event today with the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce and all the other chambers. I served on the Board of Supervisors from 2006 to 2015, while Steve Rosansky was serving on the Newport Beach City Council with distinction. So it was an honor to work with you back then. I am ready, able, and willing to serve again during a difficult time financially, fiscally for the county and for the state. I was able to work through the bankruptcy that occurred back in 1994, and where we were able to get out of Chapter 9 bankruptcy protection within 18 months, and served as chair of the Board of Supervisors during the Great Recession in 2008 and 2012. So there's a lot of work ahead of us fiscally for the county. The areas of focus that I'd like to prioritize, one obviously is COVID and the lockdown. We want to make sure that everyone gets their vaccinations in a fast and fair manner for those that want them. Two, we've got to work on keeping the economy going. We've got to open it safely in a balanced and fair and respectful manner, understanding that everyone's job is essential. And three, we need to focus on the budget. June is coming up real quick, and a budget needs to be out. And so we're already dealing with a structural deficit. So I look forward to working with Frank Kim again. He was my budget director when I served last, and now he's the CEO, and working with Michelle Aguirre, who is now the budget director. Want to work on areas like mental health, homelessness, transportation, public safety, and John Wayne Airport, and look forward to bringing all of my past experience to the job in the next 2 years.
Thank you, John. And next and final is Janet Rappaport.
Good morning, everybody. I am not a professional politician, as my distinguished candidate colleagues here are. So I am going to take a moment to just introduce myself and let you know a little bit about my campaign. I'm Janet Rappaport. I grew up here in Orange County. I'm an international tax attorney. I am a professor, and I have also served our country in the United States Navy. Proud of that service. I have the skills to do this job. My career as a lawyer has been spent helping US businesses in complex cross-border transactions, financial and contractual, as well as quantifying global financial risk for public companies with regard to their SEC disclosures and filings. So I have the financial, tax, contractual, legal, ethical requirements, I feel, to do this job. In my campaign, I am committed to civility and discourse. So don't worry, Steve, I'm not going to be uncivil here. But bringing back transparency in decision-making, which is something I think we really need and have maybe observed a little bit of lack of transparency recently in certain activities of the county government. I am committed to conservative use of taxpayer dollars. I'm committed to restoring our community. And my campaign a nonpartisan campaign is not about taking sides. It's not about pursuing a big D or a big R agenda. My sole agenda is to listen and respond to the concerns of the 2nd District residents. And my biggest priority is working to end the virus impact on Orange County.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, so now that we have done the opening remarks, we will get to those exciting questions and hopefully equally exciting answers to the questions. I'll go ahead and read that first question again, just so everybody's on the same page here. So the question goes, the Orange County Healthcare Agency has been the primary driver of the vaccination program here in Orange County. As an agency of the county, the Board of Supervisors is ultimately responsible for the healthcare agency's performance. On an A to F scale, and you can put in pluses and minuses if you like, how would you rate the healthcare agency's performance, and what are your ideas on expediting the vaccination of Orange County residents? So first answering the question will be John Moorlach, and then Janet, and then Kevin.
Thank you, Steve. I think the healthcare agency has been doing a good job based on the restrictions and the limitations that they've been encumbered with. I believe that everyone that wants to get a vaccination should be able to do so, and it should be fast and it should be fair. There should be no cutting in line. There should be a process that makes sense. And I think that's being done by the County of Orange. I've tried to do a little research on Athena, the software package on how to set up your appointments. Not so sure how that contract was let, or whether they were prepared or ready for the amount of demand that software was going to have in setting up appointments. So there are plenty of people that have been frustrated in trying to get their vaccinations. So I would certainly try and figure out what's happening there. But Dr. Clayton Chow was selected by the Board of Supervisors to be the Chief Healthcare Officer and to be the Director of the Healthcare Agency. And I give him high marks. It's very difficult to be dealing with a pandemic when you've got someone running the show up in Sacramento, 431 miles away, and every other week we get a different mandate on what tier, what color, closing beaches, you know, what that has to do with addressing COVID-19. So trying to, in Orange County, I think the Board of Supervisors has done a good job of saying, hey, let's be respectful. If you can wear a mask, follow the protocols, go to the grocery store, manage yourself properly there, you should be able to do that with your businesses as well. So I would think, I'd give a good B+, with Athena being maybe the problem, that would have, get it down a little bit. But overall, under the circumstances, I think the Board of Supervisors has done a reasonably good job.
Okay, thank you, John. Next up, Janet.
So 2 minutes to try to discuss this. I will do my best. I have a different viewpoint than John. I think that we are looking at an F. And it is not the Orange County Healthcare Agency or the employees of that agency. It is the inability or the lack of any planning or, by the actual Board of Supervisors. Most of the responsibility for managing the CARES Act funds was delegated to these agencies. And I feel there has not been adequate leadership or direction. And I think Orange County residents feel the same. I mean, the fact of a potential recall or discussion of a recall of the Board of Supervisors indicates that most Orange County residents are not happy. I can only speak from anecdotal experience. There are many, many people who I know in Orange County who have gone to other counties to try to get the vaccines. Putting in place an app in Orange County that is not able to be used or accessed by half of the population, either because they're elderly or the language problems that we all know that happened, I don't think is an appropriate response. I think we should have had a lot more planning at the community and ground level, perhaps looking at ideas like Richard Carmona, the former Attorney General, who talked about the ability to use the Medical Reserve Corps, something like, military reserves. And these are medical professionals in community who could have helped maybe get these vaccines to elder people who have no transportation, and so forth. So I put this back on the Board of Supervisors. I don't think they've done a good job.
Okay, thank you, Janet. And Kevin.
Thank you, Steve. It's almost unfair to sort of Monday morning quarterback the county's response, especially with a huge lack of leadership at the state. You hear the most common complaint I hear is friends in other states have got the vaccination no problem. California has had a tougher time providing both the direction to the county and distribution. I do feel that the smart thing to be done was what the federal government's going to do, which they started yesterday, which is distribution through large channels like private sector, CVS, and other pharmaceuticals, or I should say pharmacies, excuse me. Personally, I think the private sector does a better job than the public sector. And I believe that there's a lot more distribution opportunity than simply relying on super sites. So that's actually, I think, a really impressive idea to come out of this administration. I think I'm in technology myself. I'm an attorney, but really I'm in technology. Don't practice law much. And I think that often in technology, we use what's called redundant systems, totally independent and redundant ways to access information, or in this case, the vaccine. And I think perhaps Athena could have had a redundant system with a totally different supplier, provider, a different website. And that way, if there's a capacity issue or software issue like we saw, that could have been avoided. But again, it's easy for us to say that, especially with the state, I believe, failing to do a good job. I believe the county is doing the right thing and focus on education rather than implementation or enforcement, as we see in Los Angeles County. And I think they're doing the best job they can. We're all working as hard as we can. Certainly much more can be done, and I have to give a hats off to the federal government plan to distribute through private sector. Thank you.
Do we get an A to an F rating?
I just don't think it's, I mean, if I were to give them a C+, I'd give the state a D or maybe an F. And I really feel the state had lack of leadership on this.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Our second question: upon taking office, the next second district supervisor will be joining the board in the middle of the 2021-2022 budget cycle discussions. Faced with potential revenue shortfalls and increased expenses due to the pandemic, what are your priorities in producing a balanced budget for the County of Orange? And first up, the order this time will be Janet, then Kevin, and then John. So Janet, you're up.
So, and just to repeat the question, it's the priorities in a reduced budget environment for Orange County.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I think my priorities are related to, number one, we have issues concerning mental health and students and getting back to school. So any activities that are in that budget that relate to support in that direction, and I'm not talking about school funding, I know that's a different issue, but I'm talking about that broad concern about the pandemic impact on mental health of young people. So I think that should be a priority of the county, and in budgeting, it would be an appropriate focus. I think that all of and not being familiar with exactly what the budget is going to be and the constraints, but I think we have to, it's an important topic, and I think it's something that we need to look into to make sure that if we have to cut, that there's cuts that are across the board and not impacting one constituency more than another. And I think that health services, obviously, in the pandemic, and then looking at obviously businesses that need support to come out of this pandemic period and other activities that have been suffering during this time.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Steve. And what we did in the City Council in Newport Beach is I think, a pretty reasonable approach. We decided that public safety and services, which include support for COVID response from ambulances, fire, distribution of vaccination, and any assistance we can give to local hospitals is the priority and must remain the priority. And I would feel the same way as a board supervisor member. Projects that are non-essential from a capital improvement project standpoint or infrastructure projects that don't necessarily have to be funded at this moment should be delayed. The priority should be public safety and a response to COVID. It should not be large continuing of new facilities or projects that are non-essential. So I think that's the best way. What we've done in Newport Beach is what a lot of cities are doing, and that's the same philosophy I bring to the board. Thank you.
You're welcome. John?
Thank you, Steve. The County of Orange has a $7.5 billion budget. It's broken up into two components. One is the federal and state funding, the programs that we are supposed to be doing as a county, as a subsidiary for both in the areas of social services, medical, healthcare, et cetera. And then we have a general fund, and the general fund is what's controlled by the county, and the revenues it receives, mostly 92% from real property and personal property taxes. And so that's the area that gets real interesting. About half of it is public safety. So it's been crowded out a little bit by that department, but also by pension contribution increases. So we have to look at some of the other crowding out issues. But when it comes to trying to make the structural deficit and meet it and get past it, certainly we have to work with the federal government in Sacramento to make sure that Orange County gets its fair share of stimulus funding from the new administration. We have to do a little more than just rely on the CARES Act funding that we've received, but we've got to make sure that we get our fair share. And then it'll take cuts. Not so sure that we've done it before, but you do a 5 or 10% across the board cut, but you also have to look at other areas that can maybe take harder cuts and not just do something simple as that. But we also need to review our reserves. What can we dip into? How much can we utilize to get through this particular crisis? And then, like Kevin mentioned, what do you defer as far as capital projects, maintenance, et cetera, without creating more problems downstream. So you have to look at a number of things. What can you cut? Where are there revenues that you can obtain to improve things? What can you refinance, and maybe what can you sell? And so those are all the areas I work on, and I look forward to working with the CEO, Frank Kim, and Michelle Aguirre, the budget director, make it a top priority once I arrive.
Thank you, all candidates. Let's move on to question number 3. Homelessness in Orange County has increased in recent years to crisis levels and has been exacerbated by the pandemic. What role do you think the county should play in solving the homeless problem in Orange County? And how can the county assist Orange County cities in dealing with homelessness? And so the order for this round is John, and then Kevin, and then Janet.
Thank you, Steve. You're right. I served on the Board of Supervisors from 2006 to 2015. And for most of that time, I was the chairman of the Commission to End Homelessness, an effort to work with the private sector, all the agencies, all the cities, and trying to deal with homelessness. Since 2014, it has grown tremendously, but we have some great nonprofits in place. We've worked on building SB2 zone homeless shelters, which need to be pursued by each city, either in their own cities or jointly as a cooperative in locations. Certainly COVID has made it difficult. You don't want to just have a dorm style anymore. You've got to try and figure out something else. The governor has pursued Project Home Key and Room Key to provide the acquisition of hotels. So that's an option. As a senator, I worked to try and get more funding for the county through Housing Finance Authority. I think it was Assembly Bill 448 by Tom Daly. I was a co-author. So we can have some more supportive housing. We have to fill the need, but we really have to work on the mental health issue here. With the Lanterman-Petra Short Act, which passed in the late 60s, it removed all the mental institutions in California, and there were supposed to be supportive services elsewhere. But what happened is all the patients in the institutions were moved out and they put on the street, and then they went over to the jail. So right now, the largest mental institution in Orange County is the Central Jail in downtown Santa Ana. So we have to figure out what we can do to improve that situation with that segment of the homeless population. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think we have some tools. We've got some great nonprofits that are working in that direction. And I look forward to working with them.
Great. Kevin, you're next.
Thank you, Steve. It's obviously been a problem that's been exacerbated by the pandemic. It's very heartbreaking. I believe that there's an enforcement component to it, and then there's a mental health component to it, and then lastly, there's a resources component to it. When it comes to resources, probably the most influential position the board is going to be in those three things, and that is essentially using state or federal funds that are granted to help acquire permanent facilities that can be used in partnership with nonprofits and in assistance with wraparound other services provided by the county to service those individuals, both from intake, temporary housing, and hopefully to become integrated into the community with employment or with medication or with mental health services that they continue to have access to. And the county is probably in the best position to do that. The cities are banding together in a regional basis to create beds, which allow them to enforce their anti-camping and other loitering laws so that the streets don't have the issue and that the homeless people are cared for much better than they would be out in the elements. So the cities are doing the best they can. And the county is involved in that, especially when it comes to services. Really, I think the best people to do all of this are nonprofits. Nonprofits are driven by this. Their employees have a heart for this. They have less overhead. They're more efficient than government. We can use government dollars to help create a facility or location for them to provide their nonprofit assistance. But at the end of the day, it is those nonprofits who have the heart to make a difference in these homeless people's lives and help them get back into society in a healthy manner.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. And Janet.
So I'd like to follow on some of the comments that John made. I think he's has a lot of really good ideas. And one of the things that in addition to those kinds of plans, and, you know, John, you were talking about the Project Room Key and the state activities relative to the pandemic when we started having all of this impact. So my view on the homeless situation is that it's not just homeless. We have to look at the constituencies in the homeless population. And so, for example, you know, we were talking about chronic homeless situation, and I think, John, you had probably dealt with this in the past. And so we have that group of people who, along with, for example, people who are living in their cars, who are a different population and have different needs. And then we have also, you know, even the student population who are trying to go to college and can't get housing, and they are living in their cars. But we also have new homeless related to the pandemic situation, people who lost their apartments or their houses or what have you. And those people, I think, are appropriate for the hotel room key, you know, projects of the state, because they can easily get back into a shelter situation. But the chronic homeless people have been out on the streets for a very long time, and they need more than just a place to go. They need the social services that are going to help them get off the street, get into that shelter, and then potentially get into, you know, some sort of training or other kind of environment. But I think we really need to maybe relook at all of this and come up with some ideas using, as everybody pointed out, the community resources available to support them.
Okay, thank you, Janet. We're on to question number 4. Many small businesses in Orange County have been struggling to keep the doors open as stay-at-home orders and Governor Newsom's blueprint for a safer economy restrictions have caused customers and clients to stay away. In many cases, their customers and clients have shifted to online purchasing and home delivery of goods and services, which has been great for Amazon, but not so great for Main Street. The county has been generous in distributing grants or grant funds to small businesses, but once that money dries up, what is your plan for assisting small businesses to bounce back? And the order on this question will be Kevin, and then Janet, and then John. So Kevin.
Thank you, Steve. You know, we all know the famous saying from Reagan, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And the best thing the government can do is to get out of the way. Businesses have the right to provide services. We have an economic right, I would argue God-given right, to earn a living, to enter contracts, and those cannot be interfered with. So shutdowns are never the answer. Protocols, education, personal responsibility are the way to go. When it comes to businesses, businesses are no different from individuals. They are people. They are feeding homes. You know, they're feeding their own children, their employees' children. It's one reason we're here on this earth. Its purpose is to work, and the county has to do whatever it can to protect people's rights to economic freedom and to earn a living. When funds are made available from state and federal resources, I think the best way to get it is directly to the small businesses. I do not think it is the most efficient thing to have the government try to find ways to stimulate the economy, nor do I believe large corporations are the best recipients. I believe small businesses are. And in a couple supervisors proposed that solution, and Newport implemented it, where it's direct stimulus dollars to the businesses, but it was not enough. It just is not enough funding. We have to have a safely open economy. Those who are concerned continue to self-quarantine, especially those who have pre-existing conditions or are older, and I respect and support that. But those who need to feed their families and provide for their employees' families have to have the right to operate. And I think it's in the county's best interest to continue to focus on educating and working with businesses to remain safely open. And that's the best way to help. It's not necessarily stimulus.
Thank you, Kevin. Janet?
Oh, so with regard to assisting the small businesses, I have a little bit of a different view. I think in this pandemic situation and dealing with the virus, the government does have a large responsibility. And in particular, the Board of Supervisors needs to be making priority number one, accessing every single funding possibility, whether it's from the state or the federal government. And I believe that my bipartisan stance and would allow me as a Board of Supervisor to maybe have some of the conversations that wouldn't be as contentious if we are, focusing on party politics. But back to getting those funds, I think when the government, and this is how these things are going to be funded. I mean, Washington is about to give out a very large support package. It's not really stimulus, it's just supporting the economy through this emergency. And we need to get all of those funds. And I think they do need to get to the businesses, but the only way that that's going to happen is through the government channels. That's where the money is coming from. I think with local businesses, I think it's worth looking, particularly, let's say the 2nd District, every city probably has a different point of view. And I think it's very important to understand how to get those funds to those particular businesses in those cities. I can point to an experience of local businesses in my community who tried to open, but then ended up having to close because of certain guidance not being enforced and so forth. And then you have the flip side of that. So I think we just need to, at the county level, get as much money as we can from the stimulus and give it, some consideration with the cities to the businesses.
Very good. Thank you, Janet. John?
Steve, the toughest part of this pandemic, serving as state senator, was the phone calls from business owners, restaurant owners in Newport Beach that had to shut down for weeks on end. You already bought all your food, and that had to literally be thrown out. And then you had to wait for the opportunity to come back into business. And then it was just, pick up. So it's been difficult for our hospitality industry this last year, and all other businesses, those that cut hair at the Disney Resort, shutting down the convention center, Angel Stadium, the Ducks games. Everything's been real frustrating. So I really like Kevin's answer. You know, we've got to let businesses be businesses. We've got to be respectful when we are open to follow the proper protocols. But as for the government stepping in, I think there's a bill right now. I don't have the bill number, Senate bill, but it's authored by Senator Borges and Senator Caballero. So it's bipartisan. And it's saying, hey, there's about 2.6 billion of additional funds that the state is raising in tax revenues, income tax, mostly personal. And we should be rebating that back to businesses. So that's a bill that's already garnered more than 61 co-authors, which is more than the 120 legislators. So it's got some strong support. So if that bill is successful and if it gets to the governor's desk and if the governor signs it, then as a supervisor, we should work as diligently as we can to get those grants to our businesses. It's a rebate of tax money that will stimulate and help so many. You know, you talk to a restaurant owner who said, hey, I had to lay off 60 employees yesterday. You know, we've got to figure out how these owners can recoup and move forward again post this pandemic.
Okay, thank you, John. Question number 5. Airports tend to be an economic driver on many different levels for communities within reasonable proximity. The boundaries of the 2nd District include John Wayne Airport. As the supervisor for the 2nd District, how do you intend to balance the desires of the southernmost cities in the district to limit the number of flights and passengers against the benefit to the other cities in the district in having a robust airport operation? And for this round, we'll go with Kevin and then John and then Janet.
Thank you, Steve. As a Newport Beach councilman and someone who lives under the flight path, I know this issue better than I would like to. We've got a terrific airport, a John Wayne Airport, named after a great gentleman as well. The issue with John Wayne is it has a couple things that many airports don't. It has a community living directly under it, community that has many children and schools and homes, and is greatly impacted by the airport. I do not support growth of the airport. I support the settlement agreement and capping those number of flights. I think that the way to mitigate that impact is to force the airlines to take off at a steeper flight path. And that we had an old one in place, if you can remember, it was like a roller coaster. I think that's a better way to be a considerate neighbor than what the airplanes are currently doing right now. The county is uniquely positioned to ask the airlines to do that. The FAA normally doesn't interfere with the cockpit. They sort of let the pilots do what the pilots want to do within regulations. But the airlines want to have good relationships. It's a very big beast to deal with at the federal level, but at the county level, I think there's some opportunity to work with the airlines to go back to the old flight path takeoff, and that's the best way to deal with it. I grew up in Lake Forest, and I actually was for El Toro Airport at the time because of the economic boom that it would bring. That's a pretty unpopular position in South Orange County. Luckily, the 2nd doesn't cover South Orange County, but I believe that there is a need for a bigger airport, but it's not John Wayne. John Wayne physically cannot be it, nor can the community handle it. It should be Ontario. Ontario Airport, I believe, is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. John?
Thank you, Steve. Had the privilege of obviously working on John Wayne Airport when I served as supervisor, worked with your city council to do the extension of the settlement agreement for another 15 years, work with all parties. Keith Curry and Rush Hill were helpful in that process and worked closely with Homer Bludow and David Kiff, your former city managers. Certainly want to make sure that John Wayne is a good neighbor and doing the best it can to keep the noise and all the other factors to the best levels possible. Look forward to working with Barry Rondinella, who's the director of the John Wayne Airport. Alan Murphy was there when you and I were working the last time, but it'll be one of my top priorities to make sure that John Wayne is a good neighbor. I also agree with Kevin, but we've got to figure out how do we move people to use the Ontario Airport. We need a better maybe route to figure out how to get people there quicker. Certainly LAX is not happy with Orange Countyans showing up and filling up their airports. I had that drill the last time. But I think Ontario is something that we've got to figure out how to maximize. We're fortunate right now with COVID, flights are down, I believe, almost 50%. So we've really seen a dramatic reduction in flights out of John Wayne Airport. Maybe we ought to also encourage people to say, okay, if you're happy with remote working, maybe we can do more on Zoom and not have to travel as much for business. And so maybe a lot of these things may take care of themselves moving forward, but look forward to working with the airport director and making sure that we're accommodating what we can. You know, South County, that battle is over and done. We lost El Toro. That's a 5-minute answer that I won't, you know, go through all the history, but let's make John Wayne as friendly as possible.
Okay, thank you, John. And Janet?
So I live in Corona Del Mar, so like Kevin, you know, we're under a flight path, right? But I don't disagree with really anything that Kevin raised or John. I think that if we're looking at the 2nd District, I think that we can provide the benefits across the district of an airport in Orange County, and that's John Wayne. But I think, as Kevin pointed out, it's the good neighbor, not so good neighbor situation. The old flight path wasn't the greatest, but it is a lot better than what is happening now. And I think that we also have an issue with the private jets, you know, that are allowed to not pay attention to that curfew. So you have jets taking off that are louder than the commercial jets at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And I think that is a problem. And I think that even though those who are impacted in several cities in the 2nd District more, I think people in Los Alamitos and Stanton and Seal Beach would be sympathetic to that kind of disruption in their lives, as I think we would be sympathetic if the airport were up there. So I believe that the Orange County Board of Supervisors should be more supportive of working out, and I like Kevin's characterization of this as a good neighbor policy. We are neighbors, and let's operate the airport as the best that we can, pay attention to those curfews for all of the airplanes going in and out of there. And that's, so I think those are my comments related to this. I think it's continuing to work, trying to get some relief for the people of the 2nd District who are impacted directly.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, we're on to our last question of the candidate forum. So question number 6 will be, there has been a growing call by some elected officials in California to mandate hero pay for grocery store workers. Recently, the city of Long Beach voted to require a temporary $4 an hour increase in pay, which caused one supermarket operator to announce the closing of 2 underperforming stores within that city. The city of Irvine voted to approve hero pay for supermarket workers in their city, and the city of Santa Ana, or the Santa Ana City Council, has directed staff to draft a similar ordinance by early March. Where do you stand on the issue of hero pay for frontline employees? And the order on this one will be Janet, and then John, and then Kevin.
So I don't think the Board of Supervisors necessarily has an authority or a position in this. I think this is something that is up to cities. And so I think allowing cities to look at their own situations and determine what their relationships are with those businesses in their community is the way to go. I don't think that my personal feeling on this is relevant to anything that would be related to this 2nd District Board of Supervisors seat. And I'm not dodging the question. I'm just saying I don't think that the county has any particular role in telling a city what they should or shouldn't do. And for example, Newport Beach, I think it's a city issue in discussions with the grocery stores and so forth, and see what can be worked out if that's the way that the city wants to go. I personally feel that the people who have been providing us groceries and have been there every single day are important. And if something can be done to assist them, then that would be a great goal and a great result. But again, I come back to, as a board of supervisor, I don't know that that is an appropriate activity or one that we would have jurisdiction over.
Okay, thank you, Janet. John?
Thank you, Steve. I think Janet's right. The County of Orange does not have very much left in the way of unincorporated areas. So I don't know how many grocery stores are still in areas that are controlled by the County of Orange. With 34 cities, one of my projects when I served last was to try and get as many islands that were unincorporated into the existing cities or neighboring cities. But I want to thank those that are working really hard on the front line. I know they're taking risks when people come in, and I know they're wearing their masks and everybody's watching proper distancing and protocol, but it's a little awkward when a city says to a business, you will pay the following. And as a certified public accountant who practiced for almost 2 decades in the private sector, grocery stores have a very low gross profit margin. So when you add this cost to the bottom line, if you add more in wages, then you may negate or zero out their profit margin. And so you can see why a couple of stores in Long Beach have backed out. So maybe the city of Irvine, which has already done this, being sensitive to frontline workers, maybe they should have also said, we will subsidize the $4. We'll pay the extra money ourselves, because if we're really concerned about it, then we'll pay for it and protect or at least give an incentive to those that are on the front lines, as opposed to forcing it down on businesses. It's just a slippery slope. We've already got enough businesses that are leaving California, from Oracle to Hewlett Packard to now Elon Musk moving. We've got to be sensitive to our private sector, because the private sector provides the revenues to run and support government at all levels. So I'm a little concerned, very concerned with the city of Irvine's done. I don't think they did it in the appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And finally, Kevin.
Oh, thanks, Steve. This is a very tough subject. I really do think that during this time that these workers are heroes. My first job as a young man was being a box boy at a grocery store. It is hard work. They're putting themselves, as John said, in danger, more so than many others. I hope that, I know a lot of them are earning overtime, and my gratitude is definitely given to them, especially at the scariest of times where they went to work where many of us did not. Right now, the economy is very fragile. The more and more families are looking to nonprofits to put food on their tables. This would be a really bad time for the government to intervene with the free market and to force costs to go up, and to force families who are already losing jobs and missing paychecks to have to spend more money for food to feed their family. I just don't think it's a solution at all. I think also it's very one-sided how it would be implemented. The big box stores, the one with the biggest margins, the corporations making the most money during this pandemic, would not receive this. It would be the grocery store chains. And John is right. My great-grandpa was an executive at a major grocery store chain, and my grandpa would always tell me that the margins are very thin. It's a volume business. And so to do that to the grocery stores and not do it to the big box stores that also sells groceries, just going to send consumers to those big box stores. It's going to hurt the employees who will have to be laid off of the grocery stores. The grocery stores can't pay them, and it's going to hurt the consumers who are paying more for goods. So I would be against it. Very
good. Thank you. All right, that concludes our part 2 of the questions. And so we'll move on to part 3, which is our concluding remarks. You each have 1 minute to make some concluding statements. We'll go in reverse order of the opening remarks. So we'll start with Janet and then John and then Kevin.
So as I mentioned at the outset, I'm not a professional politician. I am running for this office. Well, I am not running for this office to use it as a stepping stone to somewhere else. And I think this distinguishes me from the other candidates. And my real focus is on meeting the needs of the citizens of the 2nd District, listening to citizens of the 2nd District to understand their concerns and their needs during, and especially during this pandemic situation. And that is a large part of why I decided to run for the position, because I feel that the management of this and the leadership at the county level has been less than what Orange County deserves. And I feel I have skills and ethics that I can bring to this position to help.
Thank you, Janet. John?
Thank you, Steve. I started my career working with a CPA firm, was a partner for 10 years, ran for treasurer, served on the county as an officer for 20 years, 12 as treasurer, 8 as a board of supervisor member. I have 6 years now of experience in Sacramento as your state senator, former, and I have a history of dealing with crises, financial management, dealing with obviously the county's Chapter 9 bankruptcy filing, dealing with the Great Recession in the mid-2000s and the liquidity crisis. So I'm someone who's independent. I haven't taken no money, no contributions from public employee unions. Certainly they don't want me back because I was a pretty good negotiator when it came to their bargaining unit agreements. So I'm getting some pretty nasty hit pieces. But yesterday was February 11th, 211. It was with Karen Williams, the director, and want to work in the space for helping people during this tough time. If you are having issues, please call 211. Look forward to working with Marshall Moncrief of Be Well, helping the mentally ill. And I respectfully request your vote, johnmoorlach.com.
Thank you, John. And we'll conclude with Kevin.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Robin, the timer. Excellent job. Thank you for everyone who's participating, for the viewers, and to my fellow candidates. It's been a pleasure to be with you here this morning. I think it's time for a fresh perspective. I think it's time for someone who wants to solve problems, not in a partisan manner. This is a nonpartisan office. We're facing unprecedented challenges, and I think a different perspective that could come from a fresh candidate who might be a little younger than some of the other members on the board currently will help bring a new eye to these issues. Whether it's my background in technology or the energy that I can bring to these issues, I hope you consider me to be a good candidate for the Board of Supervisors. If I'm elected, I pledge to listen, to meet with anyone, to understand the issues at length, and to debate them in an open forum, and to represent the people of District 2 to the best of my ability. So I ask you please consider supporting me and voting for me on March 9th. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so that's pretty much wrapping it up. I'd like to thank the candidates for appearing here today and sharing their views on the issues facing the 2nd District so that we could all be more informed voters. I'd also like to thank my counterparts at the participating chambers of commerce for supporting the candidate forum. And to all of you who registered to watch the forum, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Election day is March 9th, and the mail-in ballots should already be in your mailboxes. I know I already received mine. Remember to vote for our elected officials, or remember that the right to vote for our elected officials is one of the most important rights that we have as Americans. So make sure you get out and vote. That's all we have for you today. I want to thank you all for coming. Make sure you're safe in your travels, and we'll see you at our next multi-chamber event. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.